All right, it is 7 o'clock. We will call the July meeting of the Hartsville Trousdale County Planning Commission to order. Shutta, you want to call the roll?
Heather Ray, present. Katie Dillon, present. Mitch Gregory, Thomas Hartford.
Here.
John Kerr.
Here.
David Nolan.
Here.
Carol Pruitt. David Thomas.
Here.
Rosalie Montague. Here. And Carol.
You take Carol off, she's resigned.
Carol has resigned.
Yes. That's why we have Katie and Cal now.
I wondered. I didn't ask the question.
Faces I haven't seen before.
That's our first order of business.
All right.
Is to introduce our new members and of course, give them their customary 10 minutes to stand up and tell all about themselves and all the. And no, I'm kidding. But do feel free to say anything that you'd like to say. First, I'll introduce Cal. Most of you know Cal. He overcame having me in school, so he's done very well in life. And Cal, I think, will be a great addition to this board, local guy. Cal, would you like to say anything?
Like Mr. Kerr said, Cal Welch, born and raised here. One of y'all probably know my parents, Sandy and Mona Welch. Lived here all my life and looking forward to the opportunity. So.
And that's one of the good things is we're getting younger people. So start replacing us fossils.
It's time for us to.
Next is Katie Dillon. And Katie, we'd like to welcome you. Would you like to say anything?
I am Katie Dillon, very excited to be here and excited to serve. I'm a very eager individual and excited to work with you guys.
Good. Where are you from, Katie?
I am originally from Wilson County.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
small town and from a small community in Wilson County called Tucker's Crossroads.
Oh, yeah.
So I am new to the area. I've been here for about 3 years, but I'm very familiar with the area, agriculturally driven and excited to be here and excited to be involved in the community.
That sounds great. That's awesome. You come from an area that has experienced a tremendous amount of growth also. And so you kind of have seen that and everything. And that's you bring a lot of good experience. I think both of y'all will. So that's we're very happy to have y'all. The only piece of advice I can give you is to speak whatever's on your mind. Don't worry about offending anybody. If you're the only one against something, you won't be the first time that you were the only one against something. But seriously, bring up anything. A lot of times it's because someone just hadn't mentioned it that maybe just hadn't gotten thought of and stuff, when we're discussing things. And so feel free to say what needs to be said. So since January, we have 3 new members now, Shutter and Katie and Cal. When did you come on, Mitch? So, okay, so I'll just several new members then in just a couple of months more than that. So that's great. That's great. Well, we're really happy to have y'all. A rarity in that no new items on the agenda other than welcoming our new members. We have a pretty good amount of things to deal with, but there's nothing wrong with a break from that.
I welcome it. I welcome it.
You too. They say with the interest rates rising and all that kind of stuff, that things may be slowing down or correcting, I think is the word that a lot of economists use and that type of thing. But we can talk about things and Miss Rosalie can kind of say what's going on in her office and stuff, what she's seeing after we get through with the new business that's on the agenda tonight. Anyone else have anything they'd like to say before we get going? This is Jessica. Jessica is the boss of the GNRC planners and she is filling in Caitlin. Keelan. has, I told you I wasn't good. Did she leave entirely or is she?
Yes, she took a position with a firm out of Atlanta.
Oh, okay, so she not only left the Middle Tennessee, she left the state. So she has taken a job with a firm in Atlanta. We wish her well there. She did a great job for us. Very good advice and worked hard. I mean, these last 6-7 months, we've really had a lot of things that she would take back and put into ordinance form and all of that stuff for us and did a great job with it. Had great suggestions on things as to how wording and stuff might, needed to be done. And so we're very happy to have her boss, who won't even have to go look it up. She'll just know it just like that. No pressure.
No pressure.
All right, first thing on our agenda is approval of minutes. Y'all have had the minutes and should have had plenty of time to look at. Cal, did you and Kate, did y'all get a copy? Okay. So everybody's had a copy of the minutes and had a chance to look over that. Is there any changes or corrections that anybody saw that needed to be made? Okay, hearing no changes or anything, Mr. Nollers made a motion to approve, second by Mr. Harper. Any other discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, please say no. We have approved the minutes for the June meeting. As I said, very rare. We had nothing else, no old business. The only new business, of course, was to welcome our new members, which we've done. And we welcome the mayor. Hello, Jack. So really what we have left is a discussion. We've been working on the commercial building design guidelines for several months now, along with several other things. And again, feel free to ask any questions. What we've actually been working on for the past, specifically for the past couple of months, is how do we want the coming industrial and commercial buildings to look like? What's our future look that we want for our community moving forward? And so we've been looking at different kinds of building materials and that type of thing. And we finally have it down to, I guess it's in ordinance form tonight, is that right?
We don't have that in the ordinance form.
Oh, okay.
They weren't ready to bring that.
Okay.
We still had one more item to discuss.
Okay. So, but that's what we've been working on. And we, as we move forward with this, putting things in categories like primary building materials. If you can see it from the road, that would be an area where we would want primary building materials to go. If it's not going to be seen from the highway or something like that, then they could use some other materials to save some money and some things like that as they build. And these are just for industrial and commercially zoned areas within the city limits or the urban service area of the county is what we've been discussing at this time. Questions? David, would you like to add anything? You've been working on, well, we all have, but you've been working on this a lot too.
No, I'm just waiting to see how it all comes down as far as the ordinance and how to present that. Definitely wanting to get some samples of the building materials, especially the ones that aren't as readily known. We had the discussion of the cementous board. I said that wrong, but the cheaper fiber board versus the hardy style board. Because I'm going to have to explain that, or Mr. Noller one, as we're taking this to the full commission, why we're as a committee saying we prefer this type of cement board versus this style. I'm from bringing the last batch that we took up. We want to make sure that we explain that this is a way of managing and this is not a gross overreach of government. Right. Is where I'm trying to find some way to be able to explain it. So that everyone on the commission understands the intent and the process that we're doing. I still think being able to show that all we're doing is we're asking to be put into ordinance what is already existing in 90% of our buildings already. That alone to me shows it's not a gross overreach. We're just making your neighbor stand at the same standard that you've been staying. So that your property value doesn't get depreciated because someone decided to throw a pole farm beside you. And maybe some of the new industry coming in will appreciate that stability of value and be more enticed to come in.
I do think that an entity wanting to come into our community is going to want to see regulations in place that protects the value of their property. And that type of thing, which is something that, you know, we hope this will do. Those of you, if you see your county commissioners, David has said this really well. This is not really government overreach. It's just putting into ordinance things that gives the county the opportunity to manage. You know, we can go out all day and I can say, Cal's going to build a building. He's an engineer. He's going to build a building. He's engineered this and he wants to do it this way. And without any regulations, he can build it whatever way he wants. You know, as long as he meets the 2018 building codes that has been adopted for some time. But if we want to have more of a cohesive look and that type of thing to our industry and to our commercial areas, then that's why we're trying to suggest these type materials and this type of thing. So that it protects business owners, I think. It protects a lot of our property is on Highway 25. That means that there's going to be houses and things built behind it. It protects those homeowners, the property values also, and that type of thing. So, yes, sir.
For our two new members who haven't, I don't know if you've been able to watch the videos, the recordings aren't the best as they used to be. And speaking of that, I believe next month, and the mayor can speak to this, we might be able to move back to the better equipment.
Okay.
But in doing this, we're not trying to do a uniformity type. This isn't like Mount Juliet or Lebanon. Gallatin has some more restrictive than even what we're doing. We're just saying, these are the materials we want on a road facing building. And here's a list of those. And it's a pretty long list, honestly. And it's what we already have, brick and stucco. We're just not wanting vinyl siding on the front. We're not wanting, just regular corrugated metal, that sort of thing. But we don't care what color it is. We're not trying to be that restricted. We're not trying to tell you that, if a Taco Bell comes in, they actually meet all the requirements that we've stated. They're a stucco building and most Taco Bells would actually exceed what we're saying we would like to have as our regulations, because we're only asking for 60% of the road fronting part of the building to be the primary use material. So I just wanted to make that clear that y'all understood kind of what we have been doing. And I mean, it's been brought up, Heather brought up that in Mount Juliet, they got so restrictive on theirs, they were actually pushing businesses out. So we tried to find a happy medium there.
Yeah, we hope they come here. And another thing, as you do, I started to say a minute ago, as you see maybe your county commissioners, those that you know, this is a process of everybody working together. Us, we've had many discussions about this. We voted on a lot of materials and stuff. I can't think of hardly any that were unanimous.
No.
And so tell your county commissioners, if there's something on there you don't like that a majority of them, change it. They're the body that gives the final say on these things. And so there's nothing wrong with them debating it, changing it, adding to, taking from. That's perfectly all right. That's actually what they're supposed to do. And then you've got a a document, a set of ordinances that everybody can live with. And then Jack and the planning office and everyone else can deal with it, can manage it. You know, that type of thing. So, you know, just tell them, you know, that's what I hope they will do instead of just saying, you know, what don't you like? Talk about it, change it, you know, suggest something. You know, it's easy to say no. It's harder to come up with your own idea. But hopefully they will.
I'd like to add too that I've had several different vendors of different building materials contact the office and say that they have heard that we're looking at establishing these type of guidelines, and they are willing to provide us samples and things of that nature that people can look at and understand, okay, well, this is a preferred material, this is on our limited material list. So, you know, a picture's worth 1,000 words, right? And being able to have hands-on and look at the material will help people
It is,
understand what
and-
you're trying to do.
A vendor may very well have a piece of material that for our lack of knowledge may readily become a primary material. If we could just, like David said, a lot of that stuff we never seen before. Other communities were using them and stuff. So,
Much
yeah,
less pronounce it, right?
Hmm,
Much less pronounce it,
and that's the truth.
Cementous, that's how you say it.
cementitious.
Okay, fine.
Just like,
They knew what I was talking about.
absolutely, they did.
I would just say cement-like material.
And for those of you too, that may not have been able to look at the materials, that we had during those meetings, it is going to be on the website under the different planning dates for the packets and everything. You'll be able to see all the different pictures and the materials that we talked about.
Rosalie, if you could coordinate and try to get all that together, that's from the vendors, because I would definitely want to have that for the commission meeting.
If there's something they can see and touch, I think that goes a lot better than a picture.
Yeah.
You know,
And that'd be great
That type
for
thing.
just work session, and then we can discuss it and talk
Sure.
about it.
sure.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
So Chairperson
Yes, ma'am.
Kerr, Keelan had let me know that the commission is delaying the drainage and erosion control until Metro joins the MS4 program. Is that still the rationale for
No,
holding
no.
off?
Not,
No, I don't
I
know.
think the reason we were delaying it is because we wanted to get the industrial and commercial
Right.
done.
Okay,
We don't want to overload our county committee. One of the things we've been doing, and especially with this one, is we put it off for a couple of months now so that the county could get the budget passed.
okay,
And that's the main, obviously, the main thing that the county needed is a passed budget. And then they can get on, now the county, the whole school system, everybody can get on with the business of running the county, and it gives them an opportunity now to focus on what we're gonna send them. We didn't want to overload them and just say, I ain't got time to fool with that. We got, got to work on this and stuff. So that's really what we've been doing, is letting the budget get passed.
okay,
And then gonna bring these up. And we think that this one with the commercial building design guidelines stuff is probably that we have designated this as the most important one that we're gonna bring them.
okay.
So that's why we've been waiting.
So would you like the resolutions for?
David, what do you think? David, our two Davids are county commissioners also, and David is head of the county commission zoning committee. So that's why he's got a lot to work on in getting this passed. So we defer to him a lot on this.
Because I'll still have to take it before my subcommittee and
Right.
gotta send Brandon a copy for him to review.
Right.
So I don't have, we're not having a meeting in July, so the next meeting would be August. If Keelan already had it in form ready to go,
She's got all of them, as far as I can tell, ready to go.
I'll get with you at the end of the meeting and get you my email,
Okay,
and then I can have a copy. I'll go ahead and take that on, if the commission wants to do that, I'll go ahead and take it on to codes and zoning, and we can both be looking at it next month at the same time, and be able to just take it the next month on, or August meeting onto the commission.
Katie, have you been able to see any of this that we're talking about,
I watched the last video that I was.
Cal? Why don't you send that resolution to Ms. Rosalie, and then
Okay.
she can send it out to everybody,
Yes,
and then that would give them the opportunity to look over it, and all of us can kind of refresh us on it and everything, and give everybody the opportunity to look at it,
Okay,
and
and this is just the commercial design guidelines?
yes, ma'am.
Commercial and industrial.
All right. Because she's got ADA, architecture,
Yeah,
roof
we're not ready
lines.
for those
Yeah,
yet.
okay. Just making
Just-
sure.
Yeah. David, do you think, are you wanting us? When do you think would be a good month to take that to the commission?
I think August would be, I mean, most of the budget's done, a lot of the vacations will be through July, so come August, I can schedule codes and zoning meeting to follow the planning. And then, so if we were to just bring it in here on planning, then I can take it to codes and zoning later that week and then be ready to present.
Okay, I think
That way,
I would try to avoid September,
yeah,
because you're electing all your new officers and everything in September, and
yeah,
appointing, maybe there may be changes on committees
exactly.
and things like that,
So
so.
I'd like to get this through before we have those changes.
Right. Hopefully, the chairmanship of the commission won't change, but that's a personal opinion. But of course, if it does, then there's a very good chance that
Yeah.
committee assignments could change, which they could anyway. So I agree. August should be our target date. So
Okay,
other things, guys? I mean, I know y'all, the rest of you know pretty much, we've discussed this a lot. And this will give Cal and Katie time to look at it and come in with any questions or anything. And things that come up, you can always email, Ms. Rosalie, get a clarification, that type of thing. You don't have to wait till the meeting is what I'm saying. Okay. Well, does anybody have anything about the commercial building designs that, I think we pretty much agreed on everything, but this is kind of our last shot to change anything if we really wanted to. I don't know of anything, but I didn't want to not give you the opportunity.
At this point, we've gone over and voted on just about every aspect at least twice.
I agree.
So I think it's the most thorough that we've done as a body as far as putting the effort into getting it right.
Right.
I want to thank everyone for their input and getting this done. I'm hoping that it does get passed in its current form.
And Katie, just to give you an example, they voted me down on just about every one of them. Me and Mr. Nolan. But that's the way it ought to work, Okay. Anything else, guys?
Did Dollar Tree get all their effort done on their?
they were granted their parking variance, yes.
I believe I saw in Jack's email, Jack, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe the BZA is now at full strength also. That's great, moving forward. Do what?
I said that need.
Oh, yeah, I mean, when we were able to function because, well, one, ours stayed on until, I begged a couple of them to stay on until we got through with these building designs and stuff. Rhonda especially, I begged her tremendously. But someone with 20 years experience, it's hard to lose that, when you're bringing up, things like this. But the BZA just being 5 members, if you got a couple of vacancies, that makes it tough on something like that. So that's awesome. Well, we're through with commercial building designs. Next on our agenda is codes and zoning discussion for adult entertainment. Where's the nudie bar going?
So this came out of codes and zoning. I contacted Rick Gregory to get me some just groundwork. I didn't want to do anything starting from whole cloth. You and I have discussed, this situation. And we've known about it for a long time. I know when you were commissioner, you brought it up. It absolutely just bugs me that nothing has been done and it keeps getting kicked down the road. So this is one of those things that when I got elected, I'm going to do something. So here's my something.
Right.
So this actually came out of Cheatham County's, their regulations for, First Amendment protected adult entertainment. So that would include anything from, adult clubs to adult toy stores, the whole gamut. It is pretty much the way I've seen it. The limitations and all that is what the state has on theirs. The thing with Trousdale County is we don't have any regulations. We don't have the state regulations because we never opted into the state regulations. So there's no regulation. It can go in any commercial or industrial zone,
What about,
no matter where it's located.
could it go in an R zone?
It can't go in residential
Okay.
because it's commercial business.
Okay.
But it could go in any commercial. So, I mean, it could, they were, we came with the rezoning a request for the property there in front of Thoroughbreds. Well, it could go right there on that commercial property. It could go on commercial property right there above the school. We have no regulations for it, so it can go on any, when I say.
I would say that as far as a school goes, it would probably be incorrect. You might know this. Like a liquor store has to be so many feet away from a school and
it's
stuff. I would
state
say that an adult entertainment thing falls somewhat under at least that, doesn't it?
Well, David said, if you look at item B in the proposed ordinance, that is almost verbatim from the state. has
Okay.
in TCA.
But my understanding was because Trousdale County did not opt into those protections, we are not under those protections.
So even if it's state law,
Well, it's not mandatory state law. The way I read it, the counties had to opt into it. They had to choose to go into those regulations, to adopt those regulations. And if they didn't, there is no protection.
Okay.
So that's what I'm saying. It could go right beside the school or any church or any subdivision or anything. There's no
Downtown
reason.
Square.
Yeah.
It'd
Right
be
in
a-
front of the courthouse.
it'd be a big hit with the music on Thursday nights.
I bet it would be.
We discussed that on the one years ago.
Mhm.
231 is wide open.
Right.
Well, and with 141 coming over, bring another major thoroughfare through, that opens up all that property that could possibly be of interest too. So getting something ahead of it instead of being reactionary by the commission, I thought would just be, well, it's way past due in my opinion.
Oh,
And so
I agree.
I know the county attorney is very nervous about this subject because this is a First Amendment, it's protected. We cannot, as any entity, we can't regulate any entity out of the county. We have to find a place for it. It has to fit somewhere in our regulations. So this does put it in the county, not in the city. It does put it in M1. And with the regulations stated, pretty much that are the state, we're not being egregious with what we're doing. There is property that does meet this, the M1 there, back behind the cemetery, down Cemetery Road there, that's down by the river. That M1 would qualify for all of this. There's one piece of land, that the farm there, it would be 1,000, that one piece of land does qualify. So we are not regulating it out of the
Tennessee Central, is it not zoned M1?
With the 4 lakes, they have their own regulations.
Okay.
And I think because of their regulations, it wouldn't be allowed in. Unless they were manufacturing them, and that would be a whole nother situation there. So that was why we chose to do it in the M1 versus the I or one of the other, commercials. Zones. This was voted on, in the last, codes and zoning meeting to bring forward to you guys. We went ahead and there was some language that needed to be changed so that it fit in our ordinances versus where it came from Cheatham. So those were the only changes that we've made. And then, of course, when I took it to Ms. Thomas to actually get the format right for an ordinance, she went ahead and did what she does. And so this is legally exactly what has already been tested in Lincoln County. So I have not heard from Mr. Beller as far as his review of it. I'm hoping later this week I'll be able to get some feedback from him. I have sent that to him. Do you have any comments, Jessica, on this? Have you seen this?
Yeah, I didn't have a chance to review when after this was sent out.
I'd sent it to Keelan, but I never heard any response from her. I don't know if did she send you anything?
Who's not?
Because I wanted GNRC to review it also just to make sure that everything was, all the i's were dotted, t's were crossed, because I understand the importance of this
Mhm.
and the legal ramifications if we get it wrong.
For myself, I'd like to go ahead and suggest that we look at this and pass this tonight. If Mr. Beller comes up with some legal reasons why not, then you just don't have to present it to the commission. And it could be sent back here for further discussion. But assuming he goes ahead and approves it, then you can go ahead and start getting it out to the members of the commission so they can.
And it's very short, very sweet. It's one of the reasons I liked it so much. It's just, it is what it is. Here's your regulations, done. It's not complicated. It's not 4 pages. It's easy to understand. But then any changes as far as, the restrictions for, 1,000 feet or whatnot, please. I'm open to anything. I want to get something in place because we've got nothing now.
Guys, look over that if you haven't already. And anybody's got anything to say about it, just raise your hand. I agree with David. I think that we need to have some restrictions, some guidelines for adult entertainment.
David, I do have a question about the definitions of adult-oriented entertainment, like defining what those are. The state's really clear on like what you went through, the bookstore is all, but this resolution doesn't include definitions?
Doesn't.
Okay, are there existing definitions in Trousdale or?
I don't believe there are. I don't believe there's any mentions at all.
You got
Okay.
most of this from Cheatham County.
I did.
They didn't have.
Rick didn't give me that part, so I can get that, and get their definitions and add to this.
I'm kind of like Jessica. I would think somewhere a
Yeah.
definition exists.
Well, and the state has definitions for everything.
Yes, they
Too,
do.
so,
And just importing theirs and doing it as a section D,
Mhm.
definitions defined as, and just leave it at that.
yeah, we'll amend the definition section.
Okay.
Yeah.
Discussion, questions? Motions? Mr. Nall?
To accept this from Cheatham County. And after wait on Mr. Beller, if he has any changes to be added or taken.
Okay.
And then bring it on to.
Have a motion by Mr. Nallner to approve the Trousdale County ordinance on adult entertainment. And depending upon any feedback from the county attorney that might come in, that it could be sent back to us at that time.
Should we add
the definition, what she was talking about.
Again, that can be added later. We can always you want to make in your motion to approve to also add any definitions that. Yeah. Okay. So Mr. Noller's motion is to approve the Trousdale County resolution on management of adult entertainment. And that the definitions that will go with this ordinance will be added along with any possible concerns that the county attorney may have. And if it gets too convoluted, we'll just send it back and we'll talk about it again. Okay, have a motion by Mr. Nolan, second by Shudder.
This is already, he already has the copy. So I sent it to him when I sent it to. She has changes to.
She just had a question about the definitions. I mean, obviously, if she has any concerns, she can always contact Ms. Rosalie. Let us know.
Yeah, as far as, as far as definitions, I mean, based on our discussion here, I would just add the state definitions for adult entertainment into this, and that would.
That's the one good thing when you get it pretty much verbatim from another county that's already had it. You say they were tested in court,
That's what.
then you got a pretty good solid base to stand on.
So Cheatham County did have that definition.
I'll get with Greg, if that's what it was. If not, like I said, the state has theirs, and most of this is, as Jessica was saying, is just one point what the state goes by. So, like I said, that's the whole reason I didn't want to just do this out of whole cloth. I wanted to take something that had already had some, pushback on it, and that way it covers us that way.
And it being this early in the month, Mr. Beller and Rick will have time to look at those definitions and stuff and get that in.
They do.
Okay.
Yeah,
Who's that?
sorry, Cheatham County does have adult entertainment, adult oriented establishments in their definition, sexually oriented materials.
Okay,
So,
since
yes.
we've,
So then I'll just add that to this.
well, why don't we just go back and Mr. Noller can amend his, well, no, it's same thing. So,
It's the same thing.
Okay. All right, so to restate, we have a motion on the floor by Mr. Noller, second by Ms. Carmen, to send to the county commission this resolution on management of adult entertainment coming that may want to try to come into Trousdale County at some point. Any other discussion or questions? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, please say no. Does pass unanimously. I'm hoping that we've learned our lesson somewhat from, somewhat dealing with rock quarries and I'm not bringing the rock quarry, I mean, just things like that that can, come back to cause a lot of consternation in your county. If we just don't have it, we don't have every I dotted and every T crossed and that type of thing. And that goes back to the discussion on the commercial building guidelines. It's for management only. I mean, that's what it's for, is for management. So it's really no different than adult entertainment or any other type business that wants to come into the county, being able to manage it and put it in its proper place. Okay, let's see what else we got here. Well, that's all the discussion items that are on the agenda. As I said, I wanted to give time to Ms. Rosalie to kind of just talk about the office and how it's going and anything that she feels like we need to know.
Thank you so much. I did put in your packet a copy of, we were approved to get software for our permitting process, and then also too, it has planning and zoning software as well. It's iWorks, so the contract has been signed, and in probably about 2 weeks, we'll start implementing that. This has been very successful in other counties as well. Macon County has really found this to be very beneficial. Not only does it help with, it's easy for the public to go in and apply for building permits. It's easy for them to send their documentation in. It's going to really cut down on the amount of paperwork that the office has to deal with. Another wonderful thing that it does is that it allows the inspectors that go out to the property to document real time anything that they see that might be an issue with the project and send that information to the contractors, which is going to be very beneficial because a lot of times, the contractors are calling the office, well, did my inspection pass? And it may be a day or two before I get information from whoever has inspected on what the issues might be on why they can't move forward and be able to give them that information. So this is really going to help cut down any, lag time in that respect. The planning and zoning software too, again, that information is going to be uploaded and have that available for people to kind of look at as well, if something has been rezoned.
If I understand you correct, they may have understood it better. So like if I needed a building permit, I could go online then fill out all the paperwork myself for the building permit. Would I be able to pay? Would I know what the cost would be there and could pay, say, with credit card or something, or?
Well, now the processing software, we didn't elect to have that done
Okay.
because that is going to create more audits and things like that. So, and that'll also let them come into the office to pay, and we can validate.
Then you can
Everything
double
that they-
check the paperwork, make sure everything's already is filled
Absolutely.
out correctly. And they'll fill out their own paperwork and stuff, which will save the
Yes.
paperwork from the office having to do it. And then the inspectors can go ahead, put in their findings and stuff. That'll go right on out to the builders, the developers.
Yeah,
And they'll know in real time what's going on.
one of the really neat things that I thought was fabulous was that they would have a map of our county and they would be able to click on a piece of property to see whether or not they had a building permit.
Now, is their building permit gonna be active until after they pay or before they pay?
The building permit will not be active until they absolutely make payment. So. But you'll be able to see too, the different structures that are on the property. Once all the information is uploaded into the system, you'll be able to say, oh, yes, they have a barn there, that barn was permitted. Oh, they have a gazebo there. If it's over 200 square feet, then that would have need to have been permitted.
Or a garage
Or a garage.
that I told them.
So, really excited for this and I can't wait for it to really get going. So, and it's going to be a work in process. And then the contract is good for 3 years. And then we can re-up it each year after that. And we can add, after things really start settling down, the payment processing software. Once people are used to, using the software to get their permits, then they can, eventually, if we feel the need, that would be a benefit, then we can add that as well.
Yeah, I think we would have to have some heavy discussions with the bookkeeper and things like that as to payments and how all that would. It could create more than it's worth, but
Because I do like the idea of them having to actually come in and pay in person, which then gives you a chance, all the busy work kind of stuff, paperwork is done. You can then just review it and now, okay, yep, now I'll give you your, instead of someone coming in, possibly putting in some false information, paying online, getting the permit, well, I've got the permit,
it's a way of double checking,
keeping everyone honest.
right? Make them come in.
Absolutely. Then that way, they're gonna be getting their building permit placard that they would need to post on their property and everything so that people know as well. So I found that really good. Any questions about the software? You good? The next item that I had listed on the agenda was something that I wanted to just kind of throw out there and get your opinion about. What I have been witnessing for the last 3 years is that, you know, typically a business at the end of a year, you know, they want to clear their books, right? Well, yes, we want to have all those folders for that year done. There are a lot of folders that are not done because people have not called in for their final inspection. Now, not necessarily houses per se, but I'm finding garages, pools, barns, even mobile homes where the permit is still in the file cabinet and it's not complete. So what other counties have done is that they have said that the people coming in pulling a permit would have to pay a deposit. And they would get the deposit back after the permit is totally complete and they are issued a CO. Now, I know Macon County has set their deposit to $1,000. So just, again, just throwing it out there, what do you guys think?
What bookkeeping have on that? Have to keep up, you have to keep up and know that we do that.
Well, I'm glad you asked that because it's very similar to what we had to implement when we started doing the rezoning signs, because they had to pay a deposit that's being held. And then after the rezoning, or for instance, Dollar Tree with their parking variance, once that's said and done, then they fill out a piece of paper that says, yes, I'd like my deposit, that is submitted to, you know, the accounting department, and they're issued their refund back. So it's a special code that's, you know, ear tagged for deposit. And so it's not put into like the 101 general fund.
Now, you mentioned barns. I thought agriculture was exempt.
Very good question. Basically, if you have enough property where you are, if you have like 15 acres and you have the green belt exemption, you can build a barn. That's not a problem. But if it's less than that, if it's over 200 square feet, you do need to get a building permit for it.
A lot of people are building barns and what I call my building in the back of my yard, you know. And they're building a bigger one, and it's really a accessory structure.
I don't understand those. Yeah, anything changes agriculture.
Well, it's hard to have a barn on 2 acres.
Yeah, I'm talking about.
that-
What I'm talking about is.
I know what you're talking about, but
Yes, sir.
they'll designate it if they think they can get away with not having to get one.
And I think doing a deposit would make it a lot easier to give that encouragement for them to get the final inspection versus going about it like doing a fine. Because if you do a fine, well, now it's not just, or you're issuing the fine, well, now you gotta go after the fine. You know, they say, well, I'm just not gonna pay the fine. Okay, well, then now you've got legal stuff that has to get involved, and
How do they get a certificate of occupancy if they don't have the final inspection?
well, if it's on a gazebo or a pool.
I understand that, but I'm talking about a bigger,
They just
just don't do it.
do it.
Well, I think Macon County has a good idea there. I'm sure other counties have it, and it's probably more, but it has to be enough that they're gonna want their money, their deposit back.
Yeah, and I think $1,000 is a good,
That's nice.
that's a nice chunk
Yeah.
that you're gonna go above and beyond to get that.
Right, if it's just $100, they,
Yeah,
you know,
it's just part of the fee and you just.
right.
Was that something that we will look at pushing towards the commission to add on?
Well, I think the first we would need to push it to your committee,
That's what, yeah,
and I think that I think that's something, so you're not meeting this month anyway,
August will be my next meeting.
so does there anybody have any? We wouldn't have to have that's just a county type thing.
It would be, I would say.
So we don't have to have a resolution, or it's just another part of doing business with the county, and how do we?
It would have to be an amendment to our building permit ordinance, wouldn't it?
I would think so, because
That's
if they're
all
going
right.
to, like when they
Just like we
say
did.
amended
fees.
impact fee,
Yeah.
that has to have a vote on it.
Okay.
So, yeah, we'll just, I'll,
Well, would you
Look at
like,
that
would you like a vote of the, of this to, so that you can tell your body that the planning commission has,
Yep.
if they approve it, has that approval and they're next and why?
Yep.
Okay. Guys, anybody got any more discussion or questions about this deposit? So that they make sure that people get their final inspections done?
So this is given back when they receive their certificate of occupancy.
their final inspection.
And they fill out the paperwork to get it back.
Mhm.
They'd have to fill out a form, so then Ms. Rosalie could give the form then to the county bookkeeper and she could issue the check.
Your auditor's gonna want that document trail.
Oh, exactly. Yeah, the controllers, we
Usually
could,
2 weeks.
if they're that bad off, they don't need to be building it anyway.
Not hard.
Well, I just took my records and it said 30 days. But it has to be right, it has to be notified within 30 days.
So I don't think it would, and I'll do a little more due diligence on this, but I don't think it would take more than a week to get it processed. But I'll.
The process time is not a big issue to me because that's just a part of doing business. If you wanna build something, this is part of the process that you're agreeing to, or don't build it. And, you know, I mean,
And if everyone was doing what they're supposed to be doing, we wouldn't have.
we wouldn't have to do this anyway. That's right. You know,
So typically for the rezoning signs, the planning signs, it's 2 weeks. We tell them, once you give us the paperwork, that gets turned in, 2 weeks, you should have your check. And honestly, it hasn't been 2 weeks, and we've had 2 signs, so far 2 for 2, less than 2.
2 weeks, that's pretty quick, I think. To deal with paperwork.
Dealing with government, yeah, 2 weeks is pretty quick.
Other questions, concerns? That's a good question, though, Mitch. I mean, I wouldn't want them to keep my money no more than they have to, but there has to be a time for processing.
You give a deadline for after you get that final inspection, like you have X amount of days to fill out that paperwork to get your refund.
I think that'd be a process that can be established and written. Typically, what happens, and I noticed that in our ordinances, once a final inspection is done, we have 3 days to give them their CO. Now, usually that doesn't take 3 days in order to give them their CO. Once they have their final inspection, they want that CO, especially for houses, because they'd like to move in.
Right.
So I would say, once they receive their CO, they have 3 days to get that paperwork filled out and given to us.
Get it back, it might come in handy when they go to close, they might need to close costs. Just to make sure we get it back. on time.
Oh, I'm sure they need it.
Most closings are 30 days, so if you're doing it in 2 weeks, you should be okay.
No, I'm just saying, I just.
That's about.
So this would be for complete COs. Sometimes temporary COs are given and there's certain things that they need to complete in order to get a full CO. So that's what I would say. That way we can make sure everything's said and done.
Other questions, comments? Any motions? Don't everybody speak at once.
Make a motion to send this to,
County commission.
we're gonna send it to the county commissioner.
Yeah, the county, it goes to the county commission and then it gets sent to the proper
Okay,
committee.
so making a motion to send this to the county commission
For their approval.
for their approval. And then
So we have a motion by Ms. Carmen to send this to the county commission and for their approval.
$1,000, correct?
With is that in your motion, Ms. Carmen?
Yes, with the $1,000 refundable deposit.
Okay, have a motion to send this to the county commission, which is a fee of $1,000, a refundable fee of $1,000, which people would get back upon getting their final inspection completed. Okay, everybody understand?
Second.
Mr. Noller seconds. Any other discussion, questions? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, please say no. Does pass unanimously.
Chairman,
Yes, sir.
there's another thing that's come up that I've been talking with Rosalie, and was wondering if you had found any other on the expiration of final plats.
Not yet, yeah. It's definitely on my list of things to look into.
I know we've got several subdivisions that have been approved, here in the apartment complex that are several years old, and nothing has happened with those. I was wondering if there is an expiration on those plats.
I'll look into that with the vested rights and everything. I don't want to misquote it, so.
I know there is for like.
Well, there's something, because I remember
What, 2 years on one?
the
Yeah.
guy that,
Three, I believe is
the
what-
guy that owned the property down on 25, right past Sulphur College.
Yep.
Came in,
Yeah, that was 3 years we found out on the preliminary,
yeah,
but I'm wondering about final. Because we've got Melrose, there's a final there, and that's at least 2 years old. Then we've got the
several down there on 25 across from the, on the right side of
Yeah,
the
we've
road
got that
going down. That
subdivision.
one gentleman is gonna build that kind of a
the cottages.
55+ community there. And seemed like there's something else on that side that,
I know we've got the apartment complex beside Hickory Ridge we had that approved back. Might have been when you first became chairman, or right before. I mean, it's been
it's been a
since
good
you-
while.
That was.
Didn't
back
we
in
approve one out on Lock 6 Road? Is that what you're talking about? That
No.
land there in front of the elementary school, where it's dug out kind of in there?
Yeah, no, but the guy was gonna bring it, but he never brought it.
Okay,
That was the
okay.
guy that, down here in front of,
I know who you're talking about, but I couldn't remember if we approved that or not.
And so we've got 14 unit apartment or 14 buildings. It's 54 units. They're actually that is just west of Hickory Ridge subdivision that Jason Ford got approved.
Yes,
Back when Dwight
yes,
Jewell was
yes,
our zone or planning.
yes. And they didn't build it because the state TDOT was gonna make them put in a turn lane.
I never heard the reasoning why.
yeah.
I just know it still hasn't, so I didn't know if, I keep getting asked questions about that one and then.
You're right, that has been approved, and it's been several years.
So I didn't know if those have expirations on those. They
I
have to
would think
come
so.
back, or. Because I mean, the county has changed since some of those, were approved, and so. Community mailbox, different things have.
And then right below that,
There's a subdivision.
Mr. Moreland,
Yeah,
Craig or
it's been over a year.
whichever one of them, and his partner, was that Arthur that was his partner?
Uh-huh.
Think so.
Again, I'm not saying anything, but that's been at least a year, if not longer.
And then there's was it phase 3 of the subdivision across from the road department?
That's right. That's
They
right.
haven't done anything with it. So I was just,
Right.
we've got all these out there that we've approved. And so we have these residents, residential areas. As we're moving forward,
If they expire, then you have to bring it back, like in the minutes. We've looked at these expiration dates and these are no longer approved. I mean, just to have it documented, right?
if
Right,
there's
we would
expiration-
want to discuss that at a meeting and put it. Obviously, the date in the amendment and then the minutes that it was approved would be the beginning date of that process. If it's 3 years, whatever it is. So the date in the minutes would be the start date for those organizations. And it could be that it could be different for a subdivision as for an apartment complex, because an apartment complex would be commercial.
Yep.
So that would be, so they're different entities. So is it possible the time frame on those could be different?
It could, I'll look at your resolutions and your ordinance or your subregs. And see, and then also we can look at TCA to see if there are any.
Okay.
requirements.
Sounds great.
And it might be too that we want to verify not only the date of the planning minutes, but once they have that plat, they have to have it recorded. In fact, that's what's happened with Sulphur College, is that we approved it, they got a final from us, but the work, the engineer's work wasn't ever completed and it never went and got recorded, so it's never really been.
It's never gotten its final.
Mhm.
Is this,
So it's in a 3-year window that they have. And
It's just so.
oh, Suffolk, yeah,
yeah, because that one's already come before us, and Keely found that for us, that it on the preliminary.
we extended that. Seemed
We
like
didn't
we're-
have
We
to.
didn't have to because of the 3-year,
okay,
because he was only, at that time, was only 2 years out.
oh, okay, so he had another year.
So he should be bringing that back sometime.
That's been a year or so.
Yeah,
Well, in the beginning, until this year, our amount of money that we charged to get a plat and all that
Yeah.
went up. Back then, it was hardly nothing, so they just went in. Had these drawings done and then tried to see if they could get somebody to buy it or whatever. That's just been, some of it's been 2 or 3 years set there, not never been done.
there's
But
also.
they was, we were so cheap on our plats and stuff.
And that's probably true, but also even after we corrected our pricing and stuff, I'd say we're still probably cheaper than Sumner or Wilson County. And a lot of our developers are coming out of those counties. I don't think that's gonna hurt them that much.
You know that one cost of the county garage. He thought it fit because
He didn't want to do sidewalks,
he didn't call when he got the first part, the sidewalk.
right? And he didn't want to do sidewalks, so he just never started that other phase. And that's fine. He don't have to. It's his property.
And that was Crestwood, is that right? Crestview.
Another issue that's.
He
coming-
was upset that night when we told him he's gonna have to do sidewalks in that last phase.
Another issue that's come up is the enforcement of site plans. When we're dealing with properties that are having multiple phases, at what point are we going to enforce, okay, we're not allowed to have dead end roads in any of our subdivisions. If you have if you have a temporary cul-de-sac and you alter your site plan and you do away with that temporary cul-de-sac, at what point are you going to be penalized and for not doing that cul-de-sac?
Yeah, you know what he's talking about. If say, I'm developing a subdivision
Mhm.
and I'm doing it in like, a couple of phases. And say I've got a road going up here and right now I'm putting in a temporary cul-de-sac.
Mhm.
And then I build and stuff, and then I decide. I'm not putting in the permanent cul-de-sac,
Mhm.
it just ends there. Is that
Do
a,
you-
So the temporary cul-de-sac was meant to connect over to, it was permitted because the builder was going to connect over to another road.
Yeah,
In further development, decided that he was gonna make a cul-de-sac on that road, therefore not connecting it to the original road that went up. And then changed the way the land was laid out, and so now the temporary cul-de-sac can't even exist because he sold off some of that land. Now he can divert the road around and put a cul-de-sac in a different location, but where the site plan reads, it can't go there anymore.
so the question is, who enforces that? Does the county? Or the neighborhood?
well, you have a couple of mechanisms depending on the scale of the subdivision. So any like a surety, bonds, letters of credit, anything like that. If those were submitted and paid and the county held those, the intent is to utilize those if those improvements haven't been made or by the developer, though the bonds and letters of credit are intended to make it so that the county is as whole as possible in those improvements. Now it's on the county to inspect and make sure that those streets and sidewalks and curb and gutter, whatever may have been agreed upon are installed and meet the standards that the county has set. And if not, then you can proceed down the path to get the bond or letter of credit. And I would, that's a attorney question, but I would think that if, you know, the road wasn't constructed in the manner that it was presented to the planning commission and approved by the county commissioners, then, you know, it would, you could
It
make
would
an
then be
argument,
moved to the county. It would be sent then to the county attorney.
yeah.
I think you're right. I think that's where it should go.
But it
I just didn't
also,
know for sure.
your example also brings other questions of illegal lot subdivisions potentially too, if they didn't lay out the land or subdivide the land as it was presented in
According to the site plan.
the site plans.
Well, what makes it worse is it's all been signed off on. All the plats that were presented with these changes were all signed off all the way across.
Okay,
So the county has accepted it. Although looking back and seeing what's there, you can then see, okay, well, it shouldn't have been. And
mm,
so I'm afraid the county is now on the hook. The road superintendent signed off on it also. So. Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out, because I've got neighbors asking,
mhm,
because I actually live in the subdivision. And in this particular situation, the school bus cannot turn around anymore. And so half the kids in this, no more than half the kids in the subdivision are now having to walk down to a point where the bus can turn around. It's also an issue for trash, fire, ambulance.
mhm,
Yeah. So, but it goes to a broader point of, as we're doing these subdivisions and we're getting more and more subdivisions coming in, enforcing the infrastructure part, not just the building of the buildings.
mhm. And I'm asking this and I apologize that I don't know the answer. Does the county require an as-built plat be submitted of like confirmation of the infrastructure and site or a site plan of the as-built infrastructure?
Talking about when it's built as.
Well, so, yeah, so it's a surveyor confirms that as the plat, as the final plat was, as it was shown on the final plat, that it was constructed in that manner, in that the path where when they can do the as-built, they can make any corrections that they might have had to make any minor adjustments due to topography or conditions of the land. Do you require
I
any?
don't think we had that. did we? I think our as built, so to speak, is, and correct me if I'm wrong, but like the road, if the developer wants the county to take over the road, then they work with the county road superintendent
Mhm,
to make sure the road is built to the specifications that his engineer gives them.
yeah,
And then when that's completed and whatever, then he signs off on the plat.
but
I do think we have some officials signing too quick before that they're actually looked at.
And the discussion with him, with the road superintendent, talking with him about it, just trying to get the information to find out what recourse needs to go forward. His point was that the county only takes over paved roads. And since the cul-de-sac had not been built, it was never inspected, it was never accepted by the county. So the county didn't accept the full drawing because it wasn't built. So that.
So even though he signed off, he didn't sign off on that part because there was nothing
There was
there
nothing there.
to accept.
So
did that subdivision have a performance bond?
I don't know. I know it had a road bond, but that's over 10 years now.
Mm,
And when the county took it over, I can't find anything definite, but the prevailing thought is when the county took the road over, the bond was released.
yeah, I mean because typically to release the bond, the surveyor and engineer has to submit as-built documents that are then signed off either by the planning commission, the road superintendent, before they will release the bond. So,
I'm afraid that that's getting done without that last bit being done.
okay,
Sounds to me like you and some neighbors need to get an appointment with Mr. Bell.
Well, and at the same time.
If that, I don't know how that process,
Yeah,
and I'm not saying you can make an appointment. That's something that I don't know how that works, because that's, you know,
well, and
that's county money being spent there. You need to go
exactly.
to someone a lot more knowledgeable than me.
And at the same point, I'm not necessarily bringing up to pick on this particular builder. I'm wanting to, as we go through.
Sure,
with
yeah.
Other subdivisions, it's like Dollar General. Dollar General, we weren't picking on them, but they were just the example that we now, okay, so we want to have some sort of management for that facade. We need to have some sort of enforcement on the infrastructure that we already have
Exactly.
regulations for. So that they are done regardless of how many phases or how long they draw it out, that key infrastructure is finished first. So that we don't end up in situations.
It's just like,
That's why it'd be a good idea to install
what she's saying
what she's
is,
saying, have to ask,
As is.
you know. you-
that might be
you
something
need to
we,
kind of-
it may be an amendment we need to make to our resolutions.
She'll have to ask it, you have to get done.
Well, and then I guess that's something we can do in this body when it comes to subdivisions.
Right.
That's something I would like us to pick up and look into of doing that
Can
as
you get us
is.
some information on
I can. You also, I just found within your subdivision regs, require or put a limitation on building permits being issued for the final 10% of lots until all those public improvements that are required by the planning
It's in
commission.
ours right now.
There we go. Well, then
So you
that's-
have,
And revision of plans, if they deem that they need to revise their plan, then there's a set process that they have to go through in order to do that. So,
I think that in the past, we've been too lenient on, well, we're growing, this is good, we wanna, you know. And now we're using the words management more and that type of thing.
We're starting to see some consequences from that leniency, I believe.
I think you're right.
I can look into some potential like avenues for checks and balances through the process and bring those back to you.
Sounds great. Sounds good. Ms. Rosalie, other things? Why are we so slow tonight? Is there a reason?
I think they
Catching up?
got in before the fees went up, so.
Okay, I don't blame them for that.
And those that did rezone and started doing their subdivisions, you know, the minor and major subdivisions, they're busy building.
Yeah, I'm happy to drive out on Bass Road and Tupelo there, and man, he's popping those up quick.
Western Avenue
Yeah.
is going up pretty quick. Haven't driven up
Yes.
Western Avenue lately. I think there's like 4 going up right now.
Well, on Andrews, got two.
2 going up on Andrews, and
Yes,
so they're still building. They're, you know,
yes, they are. Had several permits today.
okay. All right, Ms. Rosalie, you have anything else?
No, sir, I think that's it.
Does anybody have anything else that needs to come before the commission this month? Again, we want to welcome Cal and Katie. Look forward to working with y'all. And everybody else. We've got a full body now, and we're ready for another year. And since this is July, that means August and September, we'll be electing new officers. And so,
That's
So
not
stay
what that
around
happens
longer, right?
in August, according to your phone.
it happens in August.
Mhm.
Oh. I always think of it county, you know, county commission does it in September, school board. I just think it's like that also. But, yeah. It's never a bad time to think about getting rid of the old.
You're still looking awful young.
Uh,
You're still looking awful young.
yes. Yeah, I heard that.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Have a motion to adjourn. We are adjourned.